Hello and welcome to the Business of Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg. Over the years, I've had the privilege of helping businesses in the meetings and event industry grow and succeed. And I'm excited to share that experience with you. If you feel alone and overwhelmed, and if you're looking to take your business to the next level, improve your strategy and sales, and connect with like minded professionals, you are in the right place. I invite you to visit eventbusinessformula.com and join our community of event business owners dedicated to exponential growth. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today I am delighted to speak with one of the greatest leaders we have in the industry and one of the most, if not the most, visible sales job that you can dream of. She is the Chief Sales Officer and Senior Vice President of MGM Resort International. She's also involved in meeting in business, in US travel. Absolutely phenomenal. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Stephanie Glanzer. Stephanie, thank you so much in all your busy schedule to take time to speak with me.
Thank you for that unbelievable welcome. You used the word dream. We'll talk about that. But thank you for having me.
Awesome. Wonderful. Talking about dream then, everybody, or not, a lot of people dream of working in the industry from what they see from the outside. And sometimes, they discover that it's even more exciting than what would have thought of. But what is your journey and how did you come to work in our industry?
It's a great question. And I sometimes remind myself how lucky I am and grateful I am that I have worked for MGM Resorts for this time, because that's really the answer. So I am from Boston. I went to school in Dallas, and I ended up deciding to move to Las Vegas in 1998. And the plan was for 1 year. I took a job as a sales coordinator at the time, thinking this will be fun for a year and then I'll go back to Boston. And I have never left 26 years later. And I think when you ask about my journey, is fortunate enough to work for the same company for that time. However, had the opportunity every 4 or 5 years to get asked to get moved into a new role at a new property. So it was sort of like getting, again, a whole new experience every 4 to 5 years. So again, started at the Mirage. Bellagio was being built and was about to open when I came to Las Vegas. So had the opportunity to move from Mirage to Bellagio. And then in late 2006 was asked to go be a part of this new project called City Center. At the time, we hadn't even started digging in the ground yet. I was the 7th employee that came over at the time with Gail Fitzgerald in sales to be a part of design, construction, hiring, collateral, which was a whole experience in itself. If you think about what the timing of the world was happening in 2008 and 9. And we ended up opening, and obviously what Aria and Vidara are today, I'm unbelievably proud of and got to be a part of that. And then moved to Mandalay Bay and opened that expansion of another few 100,000 square feet of convention space. And then in 2019 got this role. So I think my journey has always been these opportunities that I've been asked to move into, but yet for the same company. So, and here I am in this role, which again, we'll talk about, but got this role in December of 2019. And then of course, 90 days later, the world changed. And that was a growth opportunity for me as a leader of a sales organization. So here we are.
Wow. So every time you have a major promotion, something is happening in the world?
Well, I don't know about that, but let's not jinx anything. Let's just stay where we are.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And, being a kid all my life, I remember, I think it was the Aria of Vidara, when years ago you put the alarm clock and the curtains open automatically. That's the kind of little things that I love being a child all my life. 26 years in the same company and 26 years moving from one job to another, which is absolutely amazing. What have you seen in the last 26 years in Vegas that would you have thought when you started to see what it is today, even the F1 and everything is changing all the time, it seems?
It is changing. My first leader at the Mirage, who actually he's still a colleague here in town. he gave me the advice to drive up and down the strip to work every day, even though there are back roads that, you can take that are much quicker. And so that was number one, was make sure that you're watching literally what is going on, on the busiest part of Las Vegas. Because when you live here, right, we have normal neighborhoods and schools and churches and parks, just like everyone else. But yet, we come to the strip for work. And when you think about the change, two big things come to mind. Number one is when I started in group sales 26 years ago, the group and convention segment wasn't really a focal point on earnings calls or from Wall Street or the importance of that foundation, right? And the shift that we have had, not that people don't come here for gaming, but the shift that we have had from gaming revenue to non-gaming revenue and why people come to Las Vegas, right? They come for the best chefs, they come for the best shows, they come for the best retail, they come for the best accommodations, all within this epicenter of this very consolidated space. And then you add on, Eric, these 2 million square foot convention centers that, we host some of the biggest and best conventions and trade shows. So that has definitely been a shift. Then you add on this sports and entertainment component.
Yes.
And not that we always didn't have great shows, that you could come to, but what Las Vegas is today, from what we did with the Golden Knights and hockey, in the past 6 years, right? 6 years. And now with the Raiders, I give examples that I will drive to the strip on a Friday night for an event. And there was one night that there was an event at T-Mobile, an event at Allegiant. Bruno Mars was playing at Park MGM. Some of our competitors had, where else in the world do you have like the best of the best in sports and entertainment all at one time? So that has definitely been a shift. But throughout all of that, steadfast, that convention business midweek for us is the foundation of what we do. And we don't survive without it. So it's the growth of the group importance, of how much we've realized the group importance, as well as this sports and entertainment edition as a city.
Yeah, I remember when actually Allegiant Stadium opened and the teams were coming to town, that because of all the new creation, that more people moved, and then Las Vegas reached the kind of minimum number of inhabitants to have those sports team. And being from South Florida, I was laughing, yeah, we got the Stanley Cup last year, but the year before, if you think about it, ice hockey, a team in the desert won against a team by the beach.
Yes, I know. And by the way, I should add, not only professional sports that, brought this community together. And the joke of the NFL didn't allow us to use the word Super Bowl 10 years ago at our Super Bowl parties, but here we are hosting the Super Bowl, one of the most successful Super Bowls that existed last year. But on top of that, you also have high performance youth sports, collegiate, female, women's volleyball, like all of these things that, again, as a city has become important to make sure that the destination that can accommodate all of those things very successfully. So
absolutely. And I would even add, listening to you, was thinking about companies like Zappos and the culture. I've often mentioned Zappos and the late Tony Hsieh, the culture that he built, which obviously was headquartered in Vegas, and in terms of culture and how the strength of a company is in the culture. So in terms of culture, what have you seen that has changed in Las Vegas and specifically in the group you're working for in the last 26 years?
Yeah. MGM Resorts, if you really think about it, we were 3 companies that came together over time, right? You had MGM acquire Mirage Resorts, and then you had MGM acquire Mandalay Resort Group. So 3 distinct cultures in the early 2000s that it takes time to build a culture when there's 3 companies that are very different in their culture. And I would say because of that, we had to be very intentional about creating culture. And when I say creating culture, culture to me isn't let's roll this out and check the box, or, saying let's do this today. It's actually doing it. And I know you mentioned you want to talk about it, but you fast forward to a program like our sabbatical program. By the way, our CEO just took his sabbatical because it was important to show that it was okay for everyone to take it, just like I took it. So I think my point is it has taken us continued opportunity to make sure that we are all living the culture of MGM Resorts, which is so important. And that's everything from our training programs to our onboarding programs to ensuring that we have employee engagement surveys that we are using and we have to have follow-up and takeaways from. So it took years to get to, in a positive way, by the way, but it's continued opportunity and you have to continually work at it and be intentional to live a culture.
Absolutely. And I would offer that what you're experiencing is as difficult and as important that in any business, regardless of the size. Even if you're a solopreneur and you have people around you,
Yes.
or you have a team of 20, 30 people, is this the same? Is the type of
Yes.
culture you're building? Now, to your point that, yes, I wanted to talk about your sabbatical. I'm a Belgian-born, proud American citizen. So I have those two aspects of the culture. And I always give the example, a little exaggerated, but not that much, that if you have an out of office message in June, in Belgium, it would be, I'm gone for the summer, please email me back in September. And here it would be, I'm going to heart surgery this afternoon, I'll call you back tomorrow morning. So when I learned that you were going on a sabbatical and you have this such important role in the company, I was like, wow. Would you think that would have been possible in the past? Or was like something, if you take like 2 days, you're out, somebody else will take your job?
Yeah, it's interesting. The answer is you're 100% correct. I never would have thought that. And especially even for our company, we all joke that we are all so loyal to the company and believe so much in it. And the hours and the workload that we put on ourselves and of our teams, we have high performing teams. Like we are expected to, it's a high performing team. Sure. And not that the pandemic necessarily changed this, but I think that we realized people need to take breaks. We never took a break during the pandemic, right? And I'm grateful for that. We kept, we were employed and I was working 20 hours a day, right? Because you had to lead a team and you had to lead attendees and groups and decision makers to make decisions. We never took a break. And I think as a company, we realized that in order to keep people motivated and passionate about what they do, you have to take a break. And when we take a day off and when we take a long weekend and we take a vacation, self-inflicted, by the way, you don't separate from work, right? You don't stop looking at your phone. You don't, it doesn't stop somebody from reaching out to you for a question if it's important. And so for us, the other reason for the sabbatical, you just made the comment about someone taking your job. Believe it or not, that's the other purpose of it, is we have to create bench strength of who are we developing into our roles. So when Stephanie Glanzer moves on to something else, who is the one or two people that are literally ready to step in? So for us, the sabbatical program has two purposes. One, to rejuvenate, take an education class, travel Europe, spend time with your kids, clean your clock, whatever it is. But number two is you have to delegate one or two people on your team very specifically that jump into your role for that period of time that you're gone. So it is attending executive committee meetings on my behalf. It is giving performance reviews of team members below them on your behalf. And so when that happens in our company, somebody says, I did Stephanie Glanzer's job for 6 weeks. I am ready for her role. So that is really the dual purpose of the sabbatical program.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, listening to you and said, training other people, what happened if you're not there? That is precisely the main important thing for me when you start a business. And I'm talking obviously about the solopreneur or the small business owner. When I had my first business, the first thing I did, I know it's going to sound weird, but I thought, okay, what happened if I die?
Yeah.
And so because I would go, I was working for McKinsey, J&J, those large company,
sure,
they have processes and they might not want to hire a small firm. So I had put everything in place and said, if God forbid something happened, this is what's going to happen. And everything was in place. So training the other person and not being irreplaceable.
Right.
It's absolutely phenomenal.
Right. To provide the same level of service, both internal and external, without you there. I tell the story that, my last day of work was on a Friday. And on Saturday, it was the Stanley Cup Friday night. So thankfully it went to game 7. We were at that game. And Saturday morning, we had a flight to Italy. And I, had filled out all of my out of office, and my team knew exactly who was doing what. And I had to give to leadership who's doing what. And we were at the airport and I was on my phone. And my husband, Tim, said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "One last email before we get on the plane." And he said to me, "You can't even make it 24 hours. What is that showing your team?"
Wow.
And I sort of looked at him, and he was part joking, part not. And I thought, you know what? If my team sees it, I'm about to say, "I've got this," or "Please do this," it doesn't show that I trust them. And I absolutely did trust them. And from that, I didn't send the email. From that moment, I never looked at work email while I was in Italy. My assistant and we had a strategy that if on Fridays they needed anything, I would check something. She would send me a text to say, "You have something urgent." By the way, that never happened in 6 Fridays. They never reached out, but I never looked at it. And for someone like me in my role, or any of us, to be fully present, whether it was with our 11-year-old, whether at dinners, imagine being at a dinner and there's no stress of, "Oh my gosh, is this person going to call? Do I have a situation? Do I have a fire to put out? Does a team member need anything?" It is a full disconnect. And so, yes, it was a year and 14 months ago now, but it was so impactful for me that when I'm having a moment or a day, I literally go back to, what did I think about on sabbatical? What was important? I did a lot of writing. You probably saw on LinkedIn, I've got my 7 things that, I say, give other people grace. These are the things that I said, I'm going to come back better than when I left. And I still think about those things, and I have to be intentional, because you slip sometimes, you have long days and you go why am I doing this? And I need a break. But you have to make the break. So.
Absolutely. How long was the sabbatical?
6 weeks.
And how many times did you think about calling your assistant or what's going on?
Never.
Awesome.
Never. Yeah. I really, from that moment at the airport, I thought, this is why the company's giving it to me. Chuck Bowling, Chuck Bowling.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
He had taken his, he has since left the company, but he had taken his, and he said to me when he took his, "Don't have any regret on why you're doing this." And again, I'm sure there's people that come back that do look at email or do think at email and are like, "Wait a minute, the company just gave me this time and I chose to work or look at email or think about it." So I used it for what it was for.
I said, of course, but I had the honor of serving when I was chair of the board of MPI. Chuck was in my board. So imagine this little business guy from Belgium with a few $millions company having somebody like Chuck, and he's such a gentleman. He's just a supportive person. I love it.
He's a good friend and a good mentor. And when you think about leaders, right, in our organization, and I've told this to him and I've talked about it many times, one of the best leaders that when people report to Chuck, they say this is what the definition of a leader is. So yeah, he emulates it all.
Absolutely. Chuck, if you're listening, we hope you're doing well.
I still talk to Chuck often, so.
That's good. When you look at what happened since the pandemic, people said that over 50% of the workforce was changed, which I thought it's mind-boggling. What is your approach with so many thousands of people working for MGM in terms of onboarding? How do you train people? And my second part of the question, do you see, as well as others, more and more people starting their own business and trying to make their own future?
So, as I mentioned, I just came from a customer event, an industry customer event. We had some dialogue about workforce and turnover. And, there is a true concern about our industry of the lack of up and coming college graduates getting into hospitality and meetings and events, and how we are keeping people. I think that you go back to what we said earlier on the hours and the expectations that we all put on ourselves. And for many, the pandemic they said, why do people want to do this? Why do I want to work 80 hours a week for, X income? So for me, I'm going to answer this two ways. One, we need to bring the fun back to hospitality. We need, and not that we don't, we need to bring the realization that hospitality isn't just about a front desk agent or a bellman. We have marketers, we have digital marketers, we have lawyers, we have AI and cyber and salespeople. And I think that is first and foremost that as an industry, how do we keep speaking up about the fun that we have? And this is what we get to do. We get to create experiences for people. We're not performing, with all due respect, brain surgery here or walking into a courtroom. You know what I mean? Like, this is fun. And to answer your question, secondly, is we have come a very long way as a company in ensuring how, when people start with the organization, what their first day of training looks like, what their onboarding looks like, what senior executive is walking into that welcoming orientation to say, thank you now for being a part of this. Here's what your journey is going to look like. We're a big organization. So my point is we've come a long way in getting to a point that we are far better in onboarding and training and not necessarily saying, oh, here's your job. You're going to start today and do this, and giving people, I think, the resources and the tools that they need in order to be successful.
That's awesome. And do you see, as well as others, more and more people starting their own business? And how are they dealing with, big hotels, big group? What is your advice? And I'm not talking about negotiating with hotel, and there's special training for that, but
No.
a lot of people I see decided to start their own business. And the question is, how do you become more differentiated than large group or dealing with large group like you?
Yeah. So it's interesting, Eric. I would answer that you are correct that more have started their own business, right, in our industry. I think the good news for many of those is they came from either a larger or our industry, so have the expertise, knowledge, and quite frankly, they have the passion and desire to make it work because it's theirs, right? So the customization, the relationship, the importance. And I always say to people, I am going to give more if you are like empathetic, kind, understanding, and really want to work together, right? The word partnership drives me bananas when people say we have a partnership and then all of a sudden, right? Like, it's really, I want what I want and I don't care what you want. So yes, there has been a growth of small companies that we work with. I think the thing I would add on to that is we also have new people in roles, even at big companies, that don't have the experience that we had prior to COVID, right? You had people leave, you had people take on roles that they weren't necessarily experienced in, which puts a lot of pressure on hotel, convention, service, and conference teams, because they're working with people in planning of events that don't necessarily have the expertise or knowledge or history with that relationship that we had at one time. And that has put I don't want to say a burden, it's put additional work on some of these teams to, get people up to speed on, well, this is, the most efficient way to do it, or this is how we should look at things. We're getting to a point that has gotten better, but I would say for the past 2 or 3 years, that has been a real challenge of, you have people put in positions to say, I know you were hired as a coordinator, but I need you to go plan this 200-person meeting, and I need you to work with a hotel on making sure it's perfect. And again, we've gotten better about that, but you had a lot of that for the past few years. And I sincerely worry about the convention services operations teams in our industry. They are stretched. They perform week after week. I mean, what Mandalay Bay does and it always has, blows my mind, that we go from having a 8,000 person event in this week to 13,000 next week to 20,000 the following week. And it's like they customize this machine week after week, pending what the group is. And they love what they do. But again, as an industry, we've got to make sure that they're also focused on work-life balance, being intentional about asking for a day off if they need it. The mental health side of it, again, people speaking up, I'm very passionate about right now.
Well, that makes two of us, because you might not know that when the pandemic started, I immediately put together a webinar called You're Not Alone. And I brought different experts, including my friend, Dr. Sherry Walling, who's really big on mental health. At a time where not many people were talking about it. So that's always been very important. I just want to come back, if you don't mind, one question about the small business owner. When I had my corporate event agency, so as I mentioned, I was working for Fortune 100 companies, and I always try to differentiate. And when I say, especially compared to the big group that we were competing against, I always say, I beat size with service. And in Vegas and with MGM Resort and the rest of the properties in Vegas, there's so many opportunities to create a unique experience that people cannot duplicate anywhere else. So, what is your recommendation for small business owners that might not have the 8,000 or 13,000 group, but they have maybe 200, 300, if not sometimes smaller group that want to create something special?
It's a great question that I love to answer. People are always shocked at this, but believe it or not, the majority of the groups we have are under 200 people. Meaning yes, as I mentioned earlier, Mandalay Bay does the 13,000, the 8,000, et cetera, but they also have layered on top or in between those groups, hundreds of small groups. Aria, Bellagio, MGM, over 74%, 70 to 75% of our groups are under 200 people. So my point back is, again, this is what we do is, and this is all of Las Vegas. There's a little bit of this misperception. Well, because we can accommodate the big groups, it doesn't mean we don't do the small groups well. And I think that when you ask about how can a small organization is, the people in the hotels want to give the best experience possible, right? We want to make everyone feel like they're the only group, that no one else has done this before. And my recommendation is use the expertise of your hotelier partners to say, here's the goal, here's the attendees, here's what I want the outcome and the ROI of this event to be. What can you do that's special? Don't come in saying, I want to do this, 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 and this. Just again, maybe you did that in the past and it worked in one building or in one destination. Use that expertise to say, how can you help me make this be really special for my attendees? And again, it may be something that we've done for other groups of that size. Your attendees may or may not know that, nor do they care. We just want to make it special for them. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I think first and foremost, come in with an open mind of give me all your knowledge, all of your intel hotel or destination on how can I make this special for my group.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think there's also a major responsibilities of business owner to speak to their client before coming to you, to speak to their client in a different way. And too often I see business owner going, how many people coming? Do you want a welcome cocktail? Do you want a farewell dinner? I mean, then you put yourself in the box of logistics, which is important. But most importantly, if you want to have a seat at the table, if you want to be called, if you want to become a true partnership with your client, what is the challenge that you have? I understand your industry is going to this. What are the true objectives you want to achieve? What do you want the people that are coming to remember, to feel, and to act? How are you going to measure success? And then they can come to you and give you that briefing instead of I need 100 rooms and I have 5 vegetarians and things like that.
Correct. And I would add to that, ironically, I was looking at one of IMEX's email distributions this morning. We in Vegas and at MGM Resorts want to say, how about if your attendees, people value face-to-face more, right, than they did previously. The time away from a family, out of your house, getting on an airplane, you want it to mean something, and it does mean something. First of all, giving and creating schedules that allow people to get that return on investment. I always say, sometimes the most meaningful and impactful conversations, they don't happen in the 4 walls of the general session. They happen at the coffee break, the networking, the team building. So the design of a program means much more if the hotel knows what the purpose and the goal is. And if you want to be successful and have ROI, you want your people going, my God, I got so much out of being there. I am going to tell my 100 friends about this, and I can't wait to go back next year. So creating scheduling that is customized to the purpose of the event, that doesn't mean you don't have education. That doesn't mean you don't have keynotes or general sessions. It means creating agendas that give the ROI. I will say, also giving white space in calendars, right? People are doing more virtual calls, not necessarily meetings, but calls than they have had in the past. People have more work than they have. So again, creating time to get caught up on emails so that you're not making people do it at 11 o'clock at night. And here we are talking about well-being and scheduling and bandwidth. Well, you didn't give any time to get it done during the day. Do you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I think that it even comes down to, and we talk to our teams about that in when somebody says an agenda, like, how about we create a fun networking event in between your general sessions? So it's also about the helping create that event to understand that ROI.
Love it. No, absolutely. And then that's where really the partnership is happening when everybody is looking at the end, what is the expected outcome for the attendees and how you create that. And
Yes.
no companies, no organization would invest money just like that. So
Correct.
that's really the concept of putting yourself out there and bringing value to everyone. So love it.
Correct. Yeah.
Um, Stephanie, you're also involved in Meeting Means Business and US travel. I've heard many times that we should tell more our story of our industry. We should tell the lawmakers who we are. Yes, we're generating a trillion three, a trillion four in economic impact, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think has been done since the pandemic, and what would you? I think you co-chair of Meeting Means Business. What would you like to see in the future for our industry coming together so that we finally have this outside recognition of
Yeah.
everything we.
So thank you for asking. I am very grateful to get involved in the past few years, more so with US travel, which, of course, with Jeff now there, and
Yes.
I think it's been 2 years, it has obviously been a transitional time, I think, for US travel, for Jeff to truly take his vision of what US travel can be. And I support and align with what that vision is. I think when you think about the meeting segment and I hate that I keep bringing up the pandemic, but when people don't understand what the ROI of coming to an event, having a face-to-face meeting, selling a product on a trade show floor, the challenge that we have had is many, whether it's in the CEO, CFO, legal office, to say, well, let's just cut that budget of the meetings. They don't realize the downstream impact that not only does that have on their company, right, for many reasons, but also on overall economic growth of communities and jobs and an industry. And for me, it was, why does this keep happening, that people don't understand the value of face-to-face and what it brings? So hence why I am involved and why I like to be so vocal about it. I think that we still have opportunity and a long way to go. I mentioned earlier, I love the fact that Wall Street asks about the importance and, how group is doing when you're on calls with, not just MGM Resorts, but also with our competitors in the industry. And you have national brands, that talk about it. I think that we do a phenomenal job within our industry, right? I mean, I give so much credit, whether it's MPI, PCMA, et cetera, and we all need to continue to stay involved. But I will continue to say that we have to speak outside of our little walls of our industry so that decision makers, policy makers also understand it. And I think US travel is doing a great job and we're doing that, but we have continued opportunity.
I totally
To
agree.
say that meetings are going to be the first things that are cut when the world goes bad. Well, actually, it's like cutting sales, expense when you need more sales. Like, actually, that's what brings people together. We have a story of a trade show that was one of the first to come back in 2020. And it's not a sexy industry. And they were selling some things on a trade show floor. And they said, we just sold more than we had ever done at Mandalay Bay in the 20 years we've been coming to this trade show. Yes, because there was a little hiatus, but it was because the people that were coming were there intentionally. They took their time away from their family. They left their couch. They left their home office. And so that impact and ROI, people made more on the trade show floor than they ever had. So how do we make sure that business owners understand that importance?
Absolutely. And the first real big crisis, and I'm talking about subprime that I went through owning my own business. I remember clearly, and I've always been applying this every time there was such issue in the economy. The three things to do when you have an economic downturn. The first one is to keep as much as possible your best team and keep everyone as much as you can. Second, to reach out to your customer and maintain the relationship with them. And third is to actually go out and be more visible in what you're doing. And how can you do that without a face-to-face meeting, quite frankly?
Yep, it's vital. We learned how vital it is, but yet, hence the reason of making sure that we tell the story. It still seems to happen that every time there is, again, downturn or something that happens, meetings are always the first to get cut. So to continue for all of us to continue to speak outside of our industry, I think is really, really important.
Absolutely. Outside is the key word. Outside of
Yes.
our industry.
Yes. Yes.
And by the way, Jeff Freeman was also a guest on the podcast. So a great, great leader as well. Listen, I know you're extremely busy and I know it's a podcast. So unfortunately, I would love to continue for hours and the discussion, but and need to come to an end. But I have one more question for you.
Okay.
You never know who's listening. And so what would be one of Stephanie Glanzer dream, hobby, passion that you thought, I hope one day to be able to do this or to achieve that, that anybody listening who would want to help you can say and can raise their hand and say,
Oh my
I can
goodness.
help her. I can help her with that.
Oh my goodness. That is a great question. And are you talking professionally?
Personal, professional, doesn't matter. What comes to mind that is important for you?
Yeah, that is a great question, Eric. And I don't mean to, I'm usually not speechless on how to answer something. I think, first of all, I would say that, for me to get this role and be in this role is something that I never dreamt of 26 years ago when I started. I was a very serious ballet dancer in a previous life and never, ever thought that I would, again, leading a sales team in the hospitality industry. That is a good question. I'm going to go back to what I've said a few times today is I need help and reminders on self-care and well-being for myself. I think that we all think we have to say yes to everything. And I know this may not be exactly what you're looking for, but that saying no sometimes is okay. And we're more valuable as leaders and people in doing so. And it's something I'm really working on since my sabbatical. I am really working on being present for my 11-year-old boys in middle school. It's a weird, hard time. And so making sure that I'm not choosing a customer dinner sometimes over helping him with homework. Again, that may not be what you're looking for, but it is self-awareness for me in the role that I'm in.
Please.
And making sure that everyone knows it's okay with no guilt.
I was listening to you and I thought, my friend Jim and Jamie Shields have this concept and this book that I'm going to offer you when I see you, and it's called 18 Summers. We have 18 summers with our children and then they're gone.
Yeah.
And all their philosophy, and they have recommendation on what to do. So thank you for sharing that. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time. Look forward to seeing you in person in the near future. And good luck and continue to do such great things with MGM and in the role that you're having.
Thank you, Eric, so much for having me. It was fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping event business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.